All right, we are starting in child's pose with wide knees and a twist, otherwise known as wide-kneed child's pose with a twist. So maybe you need some blankets underneath your knees to soften the floor. This wide-kneed child's pose with a twist is opening up the groins area, your inner thighs, and then adding a twist to your spine. So you come up to your elbows and slide your right arm underneath your left arm, letting your whole right ear come to the ground if possible. Sometimes you might need a pillow for your head to reach the ground. So make the small adjustments you need. And then if you want, you're welcome to lift your left arm straight up to the sky and then wrap your arm behind you. And you can see as Per, he doesn't have ridiculously long arms, but he does have long arms. He can get his fingers to kind of tuck into his inner thigh, and it kind of helps the arm stay there. But see what makes sense in your body. And then take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh it out. We are doing a series today that focuses on the heart and small intestines. And even though we say we're doing a heart and small intestines series, the same series is also used for the lungs and the large intestines. So inevitably, they're very much included. But all the organs in our body, all the meridians, these energetic pathways, are included in our practices, especially the yin. So different than a lot of the series we do in the yin yoga. You could call the heart and the lungs meridians, as well as obviously the organs, are an upper meridian set. So instead of beginning or terminating in the toes, it starts or ends in the hands. Let's just take a moment while you're still in the twisted pose, just to dedicate our practice to either someone or somewhere or something. And by something, I mean like peace on earth. I read a beautiful obituary yesterday of Samuel Kamen, who was someone I knew. He was the father of classmates of mine in high school and instrumental in starting Stonyfield Yogurt's farm. And apparently there was a story told that every time people asked him what he wanted for his birthday, he said world peace. So dedicating your practice to peace is it's a very far-reaching dedication and absolutely needed right now. And then unwind your spine and keep your knees as wide and just twist your upper body to the other way. So you come up onto your elbows Thread your left arm behind your right elbow. Bring your arm around behind you, maybe tucking your fingers into your inner thigh on the left side. Take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh out. So often we have started our classes with this wonderful invocation written down by Orland. And it talks about, the stars and the worlds and this phenomena of light becoming matter in a nutshell. That movement of how stuff follows energy is in that invocation connected to each one of our destinies or our personal path to let us into the task of completing what we before birth decided we wanted to do. When we are in times of crisis and war now, or still, we have such a orientation to looking outside of ourselves at kind of what to do or how to be active. Now, I really, and you probably do too, know that these two paths are not separate. That for us, each one of us incarnating souls and beings on this earth, fulfilling our soul's deep wishes, or missions, even you could say, isn't separate from creating peace on earth. Now, in our ego or our small personality or our fear, it might seem as if a soul could be striving just for power or for money and control in this world. But I can't imagine that a being coming from the spiritual realm, as we humans do, would have this as their life purpose and destiny. That those biographical opportunities are actually really opportunities we all have to either do what we know is right, go for the harder path of peace, or to fight. Each one of us has been given a path and a life and a soul that is about discovering the ins and outs of freedom. So unwind your upper body, slide your knees together, take your arms back behind you. Moaning and groaning is totally socially acceptable in our yin yoga classes. And then, my love bugs, you're going to slide into Sphinx or wriggle or crawl. Set up your elbows so they're shoulder distance apart, slightly in front of your shoulders. Let your legs stretch back and relax down. So whenever atrocities happen, whether it's to an individual or to the world, we will hear the cry of, how can God let this happen? How can God do this? And it's really the horrors of this world that, when contemplated merely in our thinking, have made it a very rational choice to not believe in God, to not believe in anything really, other than what you can touch, what you can measure, what you can see. I would include what you can feel, but you and I both know that we actually feel not only the physical world, but we can feel energies. We react to the invisible. This level of freedom that every human being is gifted is part of what we're here to explore. As our good friend Orlin says, we are so free that even when we make dumb choices, they are supported by the universe. Or another way to put it is, God loves us so much that no matter whether we make good choices or bad choices, there is still a divine presence. Again, really a hard thing to ameliorate, to become friends with. How could God support anything bad? But this individual freedom, this capacity we have to either choose what serves our higher being or our just instinctual, fear-driven sense of survival, this is a matter of our inner life, our experience in this world. Definitely shapes us one way or another, but it's up to this core of our being to keep choosing. Not what happens to us, but what will I do with it? With your next inhale, lift higher up into your pose. And then with your exhale, settle down to the yoga mat, maybe wiggling your hips side to side or shaking your legs side to side a little bit. And then bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And either push your hips back to your, push your hips back to your heels, lift up, and either sit on your heels or in between your heels. We're going to stay here. You can either think of it as geisha pose, Vajrasana, or hero pose. And if you want, you can take the Anahata Mudra. So this is quite an efforting yang mudra to take, but our body is quite still and easy to stay in this pose, I hope. And you glue together from your pinky, tips of your pinky, all along the edge of your pinky, down the side of your palm, up your thumb, and that stays stuck together. So I always think of it as either a cup, like a chalice, or a tulip, but a flower, so that you're opening, there's a little bit of effort in the fingers to be open. And then your thumbs connect to your breastbone with your eyes closed or focusing softly on one spot. This is the pose, and it's a very quiet pose and not one we do so often. In our practice, we usually do this to go back in a yang practice, or even in the yin practice for yin fish. Just kidding. We don't do that in yin. But we could do reclining hero's pose in yin. It looks a lot like saddle pose. But with this posture, you feel it. There's a gentle effort that's required. It's not a type of effort that, blows past other people and dominates to get your way. It's soft, it's persistent, and it's connected. For each one of us, every single choice we make matters. Each single one of us on earth. And right now it's so salient. We see these, these white relics in power. And there's a couple individuals that can push buttons to destroy the world. So it becomes so potent that their choices matter. But every single one of us, our every choice matters. You can follow the thread of choices. And see that every choice we make has an impact, not just on me and my well-being, but on our well-being and the well-being of the earth. Everything we buy comes from somewhere. Words that we say to each other matter. How we even say it to each other matters. Every choice we make. has an opportunity to be in line with who you want to be, but more importantly, what world do you want to live in? Relax your hands down and flutter your eyes open. And just to work out kind of bring a little movement into the legs before we slide into the next intense posture, come into downward facing dog and wiggle a little bit, or, I mean, do whatever you want, really. You could be in plank. You just want to let your legs move around, allow the circulation to come back. Okay, that was a jogging plank. That was kind of fun. But your variation, you can moan, you can groan, you can even breathe. It's so sexy. And what's also sexy are frogs. We're going to do frog pose. So taking yourself, either using a blanket underneath your knees again, or going lengthwise on your yoga mat. You can even fold the ends of your yoga mat in. You're going to take your knees as wide as they go, very similar to the wide-kneed child's pose, but this time you're going to open up your feet so that your ankles are lined up directly underneath your knees, like Pear has here, with your feet flexed. And then you're going to start to bring your upper body down to the ground. So for some people, you still have your hands on the ground. Other people, you can bring your elbows down. Other people still can lay their chests onto the floor. They're frogs of all sorts of shapes, sizes, and colors. Yes, you could bring, you want to bring your hips right over your knees. Thank you, Pear. You totally knew. That's perfect. And often, or unfortunately, the feedback that you're in the right place is that with every exhale, it feels like it's getting a little bit more intense. And we do this to kind of our own degree. Now, if it's too easy for you and you're like bumping into the floor too soon, you can really work on tucking your tail here. Now, it's very hard to balance out or understand, if every choice I make matters. What choice did I make that would allow this catastrophe in the world at this degree? And it's not that simple. Yes, we can actually follow threads and go back and see, and there are elements that contribute to what is erupting in our world. But when we start tracing how our choices affect not ourselves directly or even just our family, but how they affect strangers, we start to feel and notice how interconnected we are. Yogis, initiates, spiritual leaders have been saying this forever. We are one. But when we get mired in and inundated with materialistic thinking, we have such a hard time understanding that, how can this separate body and this separate being with all my dreams and my challenges and my gifts be the same as that person? But we forget that the person we think we are is only true inside of our head. Our being and our person in its fullness is in relationship to each other, to the earth, even to all the planets and all the stars. Allow your breath to soften the intensity. You can even practice Tonglen here. You know, if we imagine our yoga practice as part of what's helping me become who I want to be in this world and who I can be in this world. Tonglen is a practice where you breathe in what is horrible or evil or bad or painful and suffering. And then you breathe out what you want to see more of in the world, what you want to contribute, what you want to fill the world with. Now, I've always kind of left this in-between moment as a mystery. How do we change this? You know, how do I breathe in the horrors of the world and breathe out peace? I've left it kind of unsaid because in my understanding of what it is to be a human being, we are transformers. We have crazy, amazing superpowers to change things. With your next inhale, you can start to move forward a little bit and moan and cry softly to yourself. Lama Tsultrim, who is one of Pear's teachers, you could say, and a wise woman I really dig. She talks about flashing onto emptiness as part of the path for transforming. Now, that might be just as useful as me telling you that the human being is a transformer. But there's something possible in this moment where we are not breathing in or breathing out that connects us to everything. And it's through this power of connection with the invisible world that we can transform things. Now, our next posture, we're going to move into seal or Sphinx again. And you can find there's an in-between place where you can do Sphinx with like some books underneath your forearms if you want, or a bolster, or you can extend your arms fully. And then it's like the little pegs on the violin or a cello where you fine tune the string by taking your arms out a little wider, a little closer towards you, a little further away. I mean, it really is just like tuning a string instrument. So you kind of figure out where you, if you're feeling a little flat or a little sharp. Okay, I'll stop. But notice if your arms want to be wide or further away or closer towards you or on the ground. So we say we want peace in this world. And Martin Luther King Jr. was so eloquent at saying or describing how that does not mean that there won't be conflict or hardships or suffering, but that instead we will not resolve those conflicts with violence. Every choice we make matters. Or, not or, and every thought is an act of creation. Now, in our thinking, we have had tremendous evolution in humanity that has contributed to how we are conscious today. I mean, this is very, easy. We understand, like, if you study anything, but if you study the history of culture, even, we notice how when you look at paintings, artwork, the earliest artworks, they're quite different than what they became in the Renaissance, and still quite different what they became later. But because we are so much in the here and now and aware of our own way of thinking and aware of our own inner experience of what is given, it is really hard for us to imagine that human beings were different in different times and ages of our human history. So even when we hear stories about Caesar, or we hear, different stories that we would consider ancient history, we still put our modern day personhood as the model for the human beings that we're talking about hundreds of years ago. Now, just notice for yourself. Remember when you were 15 and you knew yourself to be an adult? At least that was my experience. Maybe it came for you at 16 or 20. But this idea that you were mature, you had absolute kind of cognition of your choices, self-awareness, adult desires. You felt like an adult. But think about now, think about someone you know who is 15 or 14 or however old you were when you thought you were a woman or a man, an adult. And now, from the perspective we're at now, we look at them, like I look at 15-year-olds, I'm like, how could I have thought that? How could I have thought I was a full grown woman at 15? But I couldn't understand that when I was 15. So in the same way, how can we look back at these ancient times and imagine human beings being the same as they are today. Take 10 more full deep breaths here. And after your 10th breath, you're just going to lay yourself gently down to the yoga mat. You may even want to transition into child's pose rather than just laying down. Yogi's choice. Moan and groan. Allow your noises to help move the feelings that you have on the inside. And then you're gonna you're gonna push back into child's pose, cross your ankles, roll over your crossed ankles, and come onto your back. And we're gonna come into banana pose. Banana asana. So take your left leg to the left corner, or sorry, only your heel can reach the corner. Your left leg was attached to a lot of things. So your left heel in the left corner of your yoga mat. Bring your right foot either over your left foot. If that's too intense for you, or if you can't keep your hips or your butt cheeks on the ground, then just have your right foot next to your left foot. You can slide your hips more to your right if you want, and then reach your arms up over your head. You might have to negotiate the wall. Yeah. And pull your right arm to the left. Take a full inhale. With your exhale, just sigh it out. So one of the things that I really like to study is esoteric Christianity. And you're feel free to ask me more about that some other time. But what I find really fascinating is that in that exploration through anthroposophy, exploring esoteric Christianity, a surprising amount is about how the human being is made up and how the human body works, and kind of these occult physiology ideas that are essential to the incarnation of the Christ being. And so I've always been delighted and surprised how much information there is about the evolution of the human body. And yesterday I was listening to Brian Gray, who is an astrologer and philosopher from California. And he was talking about how, and his work is largely inspired by Rudolf Steiner. So it's really Rudolf Steiner's ideas, I should be saying. He talked about, and this was new to me, I hadn't heard this before. He gave this imagination, this picture of how before Buddha, that like before 600 BC, that human beings' relationship to love was way more connected to our blood. So that human beings in ancient times only experience love for their offspring or relatives. That the capacity for love at that time was so tied to bloodlines, the blood itself, and the heredity. That's part of why there was this intensity around tribes meeting other tribes. There was no inner experience or like understanding of loving the stranger. We can't imagine what that was like. And he goes on, actually, Rudolf Steiner describes in beautiful detail, lots and lots of stuff about this. But it was Buddha and his enlightenment underneath the Bodhi tree, where he came into this world of understanding around love and compassion, and then radiated it out to humanity from his being, radiated out this capacity for love and compassion, was the transforming point for the human being that was essential for the Christ being, the Son being, later, 600 years later, to incarnate and be recognized. That without Buddha's act, there would be no there'd be no Christianity, but there would be no capacity even to recognize the Messiah. That human beings were gifted this. And ever more and more, we have evolved towards loving further and further away from ourselves. It's now time to change the curve in your banana. So you're going to take your right heel to the right side of your yoga mat. You can moan and groan through the transitions. Transitions are rarely comfortable. Hook your left ankle over your right ankle. Stretch your arms over your head and pull your left arm to the right. Take a full breath in. With your exhale, just sigh it out. In our very highly trained left brain, we want to keep things neat and tidy and separate. And how on earth could, Buddhism be essential to Christianity? I know there are a lot of people who would find that insanely provoking, which is maybe part of my love for it. But that this idea that we're working separately is really part of samsara. It's part of the illusion. It's just as illusionary as I am separate in the choices I make from you. Now, we still have kind of this idea that love happens to us and is not a choice. And thankfully, sometimes it really does feel like that. But love also is a choice. That's how free we are. That on purpose, we can summon up this human force of love instead of violence, or instead of rejection, or instead of meanness or spite. We're living in a world that is still has the relics of older humanities, where we have nation states that are, still trying to rule by cultural wars, or ethnic wars, that one people against another people. This isn't any longer a reflection of how human beings are designed. And especially with all the migrations we've had, there's no country that is just one culture anymore, one ethnicity, one homogenous group. We want to start to imagine a government that isn't connected to controlling the individual or fighting for one ethnicity or nation or another. Because there's no outside of here. So every practice that you bring in your inner life, into your relationships, into your choices, that is based on love, is helping change the world. And start to bring yourself back to a fully extended, queer or straight aligned body. Hug your knees in, and we're just going to do literally a therapeutic twist. So just hug your knees in and drop your knees to the left. Take a full breath in, sigh it out, and then hug your knees back to center. Drop your knees to the right. Take a full breath in, sigh it out. Send your love on your breath. Send peace in your breath. And then come back to center and stretch your divinely designed body out for Shavasana. Covering yourself with a blanket, covering your eyes if you need to. Do you need more of the pillow? As you lie on the floor, feel your belongingness. Feel your earth belongingness. With your next inhale, invite your breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes, your face and your nose. And then help yourself stretch long, perhaps first, and then curl into a ball. And then come to a seated position. Wiggling into it, find your way. And we can bring our hands into that same Anahata Mudra. So blossoming out your fingertips, your fingers, let your thumbs connect to your breastbone. Close your eyes, root down to rise up, or we should say root in to rise up. Empty your breath first. Let's take a big inhale. Ah. Then bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward together, we say, Namaste. And so much love. You're not going to run out. Woo. Yeah. So thank you so much for your practice. You're changing the world. Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right.